Okie. Hello, my name is Matt Provost. My pronouns are he, him, his. I'm currently running for the position of VP External and Community Affairs within the SFSS. I want to establish and create reciprocal and meaningful relationships with organizations and external resources that can further support students. For myself, like my current experience, prior to being, I'm currently the VP Student Services for the SFSS, but even prior to working on this board, I've been, doing a lot of community work prior to this. So I was on the First Nation Student Association board for pretty much my whole degree. I was on their board for 3 years. I helped with a lot of community events and building, long-standing relationships. And also, I feel as though my experience, I think has really helped, the way I do my work now. I was on the board for the Aboriginal Front Door Society on the downtown east side. I was in a secretary role, and for that, I was volunteering a lot at AFD, and I was supporting folks on the downtown east side, people in like precarious situations who needed support, and doing a lot of cultural work as well, and working with community and working with Carnegie, working with Culture Saves Lives has been really helpful. I've spent a lot of time doing just a lot of community involvement, working with elders, working with youth. I was on the committee working board for Vancouver Aboriginal Friendship Center, for a couple of years. So I committed a lot of time to that as well, and just supporting the community in a good way. For myself as well, just working with a lot of external organizations, for myself, finding resources to help youth or supporting youth. I did a lot of work with, just supporting youth in care, and then also, supporting a lot of, financial support as well, and also just making those connections so that people kind of knew where to go. I think this position is really important because for myself, I've faced a lot of situations that have been challenging throughout my degree, and I've had to access, financial support. I've had to access subsidies. I've had issues with food security, and I feel like with this role, that experience is really key, so that if I was able to build, these relationships or commit to ensuring that students had proper support, that I would be able to direct them, whether you're in Vancouver, whether you're in Surrey, whether you're in New West or Burnaby, to making those connections so that you can also receive those external supports. Because I have an understanding that we do have our own services and supports, but some of those aren't accessible for all students at our school. And especially during COVID, you need to make sure that you're exhausting as much resources as you can so that you can basically meet the end goal by completing your degree or even just getting through the semester. So anything that I can do to provide those resources or work towards, making sure where how to access mental health resources or things like that, I think I can bridge those gaps so that students have that support externally. Okay, so I'll kind of just backtrack a bit. So this year on the board, one of the things that I wanted to do was make SFSS more inclusive towards, the BIPOC community, Black, Indigenous, and people of color. Because prior to that, even for myself, I didn't really see myself fitting in within this society, or even, representing myself or the community as well. So one of the first things that I did in my term was establish the terms of reference for the BIPOC committee on the SFSS. And one of the issues that we've been talking about, that we've been trying to work on, is our issues policy. So issues policies just take on a different, they're just written or some form of policy that, is mandated towards the SFSS to follow. So right now we have only one current issues policy, which is reproductive rights. And then so within my role moving forward, I would like to continue that work with the BIPOC committee, and also making sure that, we have issues policies around anti-racism. We're also, we're working, even for my role as like external, like making sure that we're not working with external groups that may be problematic or cause harm. So doing that background research, or like, who are we working with, who is in our like community, and making sure that, those resources that we're accessing may not be like problematic to students as well. So I guess I want to expand on the issues policies we currently have under the SFSS in line with my role as external relations. And this also goes with our current mandate, fighting and advocating for students. So that includes like, advocating for student affordability, accessible transit, affordable housing, and combating like, food insecurity. So making sure that we can have issues policies that align, that support our students if there's anything, that is ongoing or we need to raise awareness around or advocate for. That's in terms of policies, that's what I would like to work on. So with this specific question, I think this deals more with like events and student affairs, and also finance and services. So I would definitely be working with them at any capacity. This year, I know that the current board has been working with clubs and DSUs to increase their core funding so that, they don't have to take as much grants as well. But for my role specifically, I can also explore working with external grants, like within community. So if there's a certain club or DSU that kind of meets the criteria to apply for these grants to, run an event specifically for something, like I can do that research and also, compile these resources so that current clubs and DSUs can have access to external funding options. Yes, so I do support the tuition freeze, especially with the impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic. We have seen how the quality of education has like lowered substantially, especially for students in precarious situations. I also believe that education should be accessible through a financial standpoint, as well as just the ability to attend classes. And we know that, students were dealing with this a lot, like at the beginning of the pandemic when we all had to go to remote learning. Like not everybody has the means to learn from home. Like that's why there was, emergency funding and stuff like that, just so that if you didn't have access to a laptop or like things like that, that you could learn from home. So, just the ability to attend classes like was a barrier. And especially learning like in isolated situations, like I don't think that this is, ideal for a lot of students learning. Like, so from what we all have experienced this year, we have seen how like remote learning has been very challenging for like so many of us. And with the tuition freeze, we are continuing the work that students should not have to struggle to complete their degrees. And especially with the raise in tuition that has happened this year, a lot of students have been struggling, like, do I continue going to school? And I feel like that's just an unfair position to put students in. Like, do I either pay my tuition or do I pay my rent? Or do I go buy grocery? Or like, if you can't pay your tuition, then like, what do you do? It's putting students in, just an unbelievable like amount of stress that isn't needed to be worrying about. The cost of living is already going up. Students don't have as much access to work, or if they are working, like, there's a high risk of getting COVID like in their workplace if they're considered essential. So I think there's all of these things that we need to take into account about like how much a tuition freeze would be, really helpful for a lot of students in those positions, especially like marginalized students. A lot of marginalized students, a lot of BIPOC students have been, and like international students have been dealing with this, for it's been really hard on them. So I do support a tuition freeze, and those are kind of like my thoughts around it. Yeah, I think I just like want to reiterate that for myself, I just want to continue doing work, with an open mind and open heart, and also continue to make sure that, even one thing on my platform that I want to do in a good way is, like, you know, we are committed to doing reconciliation efforts. And as of right now, the SFSS doesn't have a relationship with host nations. And I think that's, you know, that's not a good place for us to be in, and we need to start establishing and creating those relationships in a good way. So that's something that I want to take on, and making sure that, you know, we're doing proper consultation, because we are on stolen and unceded territory. And if we really want to say that we're committed to that, then that should be the first step, like, you know, with anything that we're doing, because, you know, we're privileged to be at a university, but at whose expense? The Indigenous people of those territories. We're at school because that's where the university is situated, and they're benefiting off that as well. So always making sure that we're doing that work in a good way. And I also feel as though my experience, you know, with dealing with a lot of these situations and kind of raising awareness around that, like bringing that experiential knowledge and also bringing that, you know, lived experience to some of these roles is really needed, because I don't know, like, there's a lot of stuff that, like, I can speak to and that I can, you know, support students with, because I've dealt with a lot of that stuff myself. So I hope that, you know, moving forward, like, continuing the work that I've already been doing, and then hopefully building off new stuff that we can do, hopefully this upcoming year. Yes, remember to vote Matt for VP External, February 16th to 18th. Even if you don't vote for me, I hope you just vote in general, because we want to see a good voting turnout this year.